Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. In this animation, we will analyze Imkan-rukyat criteria for determining the onset of an Islamic month. As a case study, we will analyze the astronomical data for transition from Sha'ban to Ramadan 1433 in July this year. We have selected cities whereby the crescent's altitude will be positive at the sunsets of 19 July 2012, as shown in Table 1. Geographical position of all these 9 points can be seen on Google Earth map. We have shown that the window to conduct moon sighting is actually narrow, as it is only possible between sunsets and moonsets. Because 1. When the sun already sets, this is actually the best time to conduct moon sighting, because all shining objects will have better potential to be seen. However, in practice, although the sun already disappears, the Earth's atmosphere is still reflecting the sunlight. Therefore, it is still quite dazzling actually. This is the biggest problem, causing difficulty in seeing the crescent. Taking crescent's picture will not help much, as long as the camera sensor still works within the visible light range. 2. In a few minutes, up to a maximum of about 1 hour, the moon will follow the set. Right after the moon set, it is no longer possible for us to see the moon because the moon is blocked by the Earth. What one must bear in mind though, although the moon has already set, the crescent is actually getting bigger and bigger continuously. 3. When the moon rises in the morning in the eastern horizon, the sun has risen all ahead of the moon. Therefore, the crescent is invisible either because it will be attenuated by strong intensity of the sunlight. 4. When the sun sets again, it will create a wider window for moon sighting than the previous one. This window will terminate if the moon sets, and so on and so forth. Table 2 below, in addition to showing the characteristics of the crescent at sunsets of July 19, 2012, it also shows the window to conduct moon sighting within the 24-hour presence of the crescent between two sunsets of July 19 and 2012. Astronomical information in columns 3 to 6 in Table 4 was obtained from accurate times developed by Muhammad Odeh of Jordan. What is actually Imkan-rukyat? In short, Imkan-rukyat is an astronomical criterion that is regarded as a compromise in accommodating the proponents of moon sighting method. In so doing, the calculated position of the crescent has better possibility to be physically seen. In general, the requirement is given in the 238 formula. 1. Number 2 indicates the minimum altitude of the crescent is 2 degrees at sunset. 2. Number 3 indicates the minimum elongation angle between the moon and the sun is 3 degrees at sunset. 3. Number 8 indicates the minimum age of the moon since the conjunction is 8 hours. To suggest that the onset of an Islamic month is valid, all these 3 conditions must be met. A somewhat strange very often happens though. Although the astronomical calculation suggests that Imkan-rukyat criteria are not met, the political authorities in Jakarta are normally still conducting the moon sighting by spreading tens of moon's observers to a number of geographical points to verify the absence of the crescent. This simply means that the calculated Imkan-rukyat is essentially ignored. Now let's look at Table 2. because the altitude of the new moon in Makassar and Jakarta at the sunset of July 19, 2012 will be less than 2 degrees, it is most likely that the authorities in Jakarta will not recognize it as a valid onset of Ramadan 1433. Moreover, because the conjunction occurs at 12:24 Makassar local time, then when the sunset at 18:05 on July 19, 2012 in Makassar, the moon age will approximately be only 5.5 hours. So, most likely what will happen is the authority in Jakarta, Indonesia will ask Indonesian Muslims to complete the month of Sha'ban 1433 to be 30 days. Table 3 shows the characteristics of the crescent in two consecutive sunsets on July 19 and 20, 2012. Astronomical data in columns 4 to 7 will produce information in column 8 and 9. In the table, we will use the astronomical data of the crescents of the easternmost point, Makassar, as a reference for analyzing the characteristics of the crescent in two consecutive sunsets. 1. At sunsets of July 19, 2012, the altitude of the crescent in Makassar will be positive 1.4 degrees, while the crescent thickness will be 0.05 minutes. 2. At the next sunset on July 20, 2012, the altitude of the crescent in Makassar will be 13.1 degrees, while the thickness of the crescent will be 0.52 minutes. Thus, between these two sunsets, with reference to Makassar, the thickness of the crescent will increase at the rate of 0.02 minutes per hour, while the moon will be orbiting the Earth at an angular velocity of 14.51 degrees per hour. Based on this information, Table 4 shows the timeline of changes of the crescent characteristic with reference to Makassar. 1. We will not analyze two geographical points, Jakarta and Muscat, because crescent altitude at sunset on July 19, 2012 in these two geographical points will be less than 2 degrees. As time zone difference between Makassar and Kampala is 5 hours, when the sun sets at 19:00 on July 19, 2012 in Kampala, in Makassar it was already midnight on July 20, 2012. With the calculated growth of the thickness of the crescent and the apparent orbit of the moon, then the characteristics of the crescent with reference to Makassar at sunset in Kampala will be: crescent altitude is minus 71.2 in the western horizon, while the thickness of the crescent will be 0.17 minutes. The crescent is therefore 240% thicker than at sunset in Makassar 6 hours earlier. Peculiarities begin to appear here. While 0.10 minutes thick crescent at sunset in Kampala is recognized as a valid mark to begin Ramadan because its altitude is 3.7 degrees, the thickness of the crescent with reference to Makassar, which is actually now 0.17 minutes, or some 70% larger than the crescent in Kampala, cannot be recognized to start Ramadan in Makassar. The reason is just simply the crescent is invisible to the eye as it is below the Makassar horizon. 4. Some people give excuses that recognizing the crescent in Makassar to start Ramadan at this particular moment means embracing the global appearance of crescent when it should be local. 5. Now, when the sun sets at 18:07 July 19 to 2012 in Galapagos Island, the crescent will be at an altitude of 7.7 degrees with a thickness of the crescent of 0.24 minutes. It will therefore be valid to commence Ramadan in the Galapagos Island. As the time zone difference between Makassar and Galapagos Island is 14 hours, at dusk in Galapagos Island, in Makassar will be at 8:07 on July 20, 2012. Meanwhile, the moon will have a thickness of 0.33 minutes at an altitude of positive 21.7 degrees above the eastern horizon of Makassar. Here the next peculiarities appear. While the new moon with a thickness of 0.24 minutes in the Galapagos Island is recognized as a valid entry for Ramadan, the crescent, which will be much larger with thickness of 0.33 minutes on the eastern horizon of Makassar, will be invalidated. The cause is simply at 8 a.m. July 20, 2012 in Makassar, the sun will be so bright, and therefore the crescent will be invisible, although it is now actually in the same celestial spheres of Makassar. Surely, there must be people who argue, 1. An entry for an Islamic day is at sunset. Therefore, the commencement of an Islamic month should not be determined based on the condition of the crescent in the morning. 2. Rasul determined the onset of an Islamic month by looking at the crescent at sunset. These statements are actually wrong, because if our technological ability to confirm the presence of the crescent is just by physical sighting, then the available window is very narrow indeed, as described above. That is between sunset and moonset. There is no other way. In the meantime, how can the beginning of a month be determined by a showdown, similar to an auction? If we miss a bid in a particular second, then we have to rebid in the next moment at much more expensive price. This is absolutely absurd. If you turn 20 years today, any moment after today, then you will be 20 years of age, regardless whether or not you celebrate your birthday today. No one will celebrate your 21st birthday next year only because you forget to do it today. If you do it, then it is simply just self-deception, because if you want to celebrate it next year, then it should be your 21st birthday. This is very clear common sense. So if a Muslim invalidates the existence of a relatively large crescent having a thickness of 0.33 minutes at an altitude of 21.7 degrees above the eastern horizon of Makassar around 8 a.m. on July 20, 2012, only because they could not see it, this person is also self-deceptive. He or she is pretending to be unlettered. If you are able to access these animations, you must be a well-educated person. Therefore, Imkan-rukyat criterion is actually misleading. Unfortunately, some scientists are trying to enforce, as it is a sophisticated criterion to hundreds of millions of Muslims who are helpless in performing their own analysis because they have not learned astronomy. Wallahu alam. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.